Hello, and welcome back to a new episode of our podcast. This is the $2 Film Club, and today we are talking about one of the most important icons in not just cinematic history, but pop culture overall. As you might know, James Gunn's Superman has hit theaters and effectively kickstarted the new DC universe. So this week we will be looking back on the first three Christopher Reeve Superman films. It is worth mentioning that although the 1978 film is not the first time Superman or even a DC superhero was adapted for a feature film, it is generally the most recognizable version of the character and responsible for the idea that big budget superhero films could be profitable. So yeah, let's get into it. First, we're talking about the myth, the legend, Superman the movie, directed by Richard Donner.
Wow, this movie had a big budget. Sorry, I was scrolling to the bottom of the IMDb page, and I was wondering how much it was made for. And man, it wasn't a cheap film. Like I even think for I mean, now would be considered like a medium budget film, but
Yeah,
55 million, dude, in mid 70s when they were getting funding for this. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I think this is one of the most important films and like blockbusters. The year before this, Star Wars came out, the first one. So you have two like big sci-fi films that did really well at the box office. Because this made like what $300 million according to Wikipedia.
Yeah, worldwide it made 300, and then US and Canada made around 135 million. And it opened to around 7.5 million in the
Mm.
US, Canada.
Yeah, it says here that this was the most expensive film made up to that point.
Yeah, yeah, that makes
That's
a lot of
crazy.
sense. That makes a
I
lot of
mean,
sense.
it does. I will say that the thing that I really like about this movie in particular is the scale. Like, it has a really grand scale, and I mean, yeah. Let's not beat around the bush. The best thing about this movie is that Richard Donner directed it. Like the next ones that we're going to talk about are so like mired by the fact that he's just not involved in them. But yeah. So uh, yeah. Let's just get into it. I want to know like what your first like impression of this movie was when you like first saw it.
I saw it a long ass time ago well, not a long ass time ago. I watched it in my late teens last time, and now I'm in my mid 20s. Hate that. But I grew up watching this movie as like a little kid, and so coming back to it after going through film school and really getting to know film inside and out more so, it's I appreciate this film much more than I think I did even as a youngster, because I was told that it was a super important film. But outside of, oh, this is a superhero figure that I know this is going to be an ironic statement now because of the whole Trump stuff, but Superman's American hero. That's how fucking he was thrown on to me as a young kid. And I find it super ironically funny that these films never represent him that way, or they drop a line or two like that. And so I think coming back to it now, it changes my idea of who Superman is. And I find it interesting too because I know you're seeing the James Gunn one tonight. I'd seen it last week, and I'm gonna try and see it again tomorrow because I think we're recording for it. We're doing James Gunn's Superman next week for our episode, and so I'm really excited to go back to it because now watching this after the fact, it puts this film and the Donner cut into a much different perspective than I think Superman 3. You know what I mean? Because Superman 3 is just Superman 3.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, obviously, I've been hearing a lot of good things about the new one, and I don't know how. Yeah, obviously, I don't know how they compare yet because I haven't seen it, but I don't know. Like even from like the trailers, I could tell that it was more in line with what like these movies were trying to do. I mean, at least the first two. Um,
Well, you can even tell that was the first thing right away. I remember Krypton and the way he was portrayed pretty vividly, but just this time around, I really like the design choices of everything in this film just from a creative standpoint because I love Man of Steel. I don't know when we'll ever
you do.
get to that. Yeah, dude, I don't know whenever we'll get to that film one day. I'm a fan of it because I like it as like an Elseworld story. Like this is the darker version, and I
Mm.
appreciate it for that. I don't really keep anything that came after that attached to it. But this just super vibrant colors, and I'm looking on the IMDb now, and they're playing scenes from when Krypton explodes. Like this is a I don't remember this being so like kind of brutal in the beginning. Everyone's just blowing up and just falling into the middle of the planet before it just like combusts into a nuke. And I'm just like, holy shit, bro. Somehow this feels a lot more tragic than the way Zack Snyder portrayed it in like 2013. And I think that says something because this is a relatively it's rated PG, but it's a pretty like childlike film between its
Yeah,
humor, the representation of the characters, like
yeah. I mean, I think obviously at the time, that was the way to go. I agree with you that like there's a lot of things in this movie that you kind of when you're watching, you're kind of surprised. Like, oh, I'm not really. I wouldn't have expected them to do it that way, but there are a lot of like kid friendly aspects, and I think for the most part, it does a good job of balancing those. Like the problem with and I don't want to get too bogged down with like talking about the other versions of the character because we are going to talk about them like sometime down the line. But yeah, the problem with Snyder's version is just that it leaned too much in one direction, being the overly serious, edgy, gritty type thing. um, and obviously that's more of like a surface level of approaching that topic, but I don't know, that's the reason why I don't like the Man of Steel as much. Like I still think that it's not the worst movie in the Superman franchise, and we're going to talk about them. But yeah, personally, this one is my favorite so far of all the Superman movies I've seen. It's really hard to beat. And if from the performances to the design choices to the story, like the story is surprisingly solid in this movie, like especially comparatively to the next two. Specifically, like in referring to like the sequel, meaning like the theatrical version, because I do like the Richard Donner version a lot more, but Superman 3 is just awful.
it's just a cesspool.
But yeah, yeah, we'll get to that. But anyways, yeah, I really like this one for a lot of the interesting choices that it made. And a lot of that too, like it's hard to talk about these movies without talking about like the chaotic production of like all of them, because you've got so I think that the thing that a lot of people forget is that these aren't technically Warner Brothers movies, because the Salkinds, I think it's Alexander and Ilya Salkind, the father son duo. They were the ones who primarily produced this and the second one, and so they bought the rights, and they signed essentially mostly like a distribution deal with Warner Brothers. It's a little more complicated than that, but they were essentially responsible for financing the entire production of the movie. And then once they submitted it to Warner Brothers would then cover that like initial budgetary cost. But anything that went over it, the Salkinds would have to pay the difference essentially. But yeah, the production of this movie is really interesting because obviously Superman and Superman 2 were filmed back to back, or they started being filmed like simultaneously. And obviously Richard Donner was helmed the first one, and then he was subsequently fired after the release of Superman the movie, and then Richard Lester took over directing the sequel. And so that's why jumping from Superman the movie to Superman 2 is a very jarring experience, because there's a very big like tonal difference between the two. And honestly, the only reason why I think Superman 2 works as much as it does, like the theatrical version works as much as it does, is because so much of it is formed from the backbone of what Richard Donner already did. Um, but yeah, Superman is probably the best out of all of them, because it's Richard Donner's complete vision essentially.
I know. I find it interesting too with the Donner cut for Superman 2. Is I'm pretty sure he only filmed about 85% of the film itself before he got cut from the film, and they did a
Yeah.
whole massive recut on the film. And so when you go back and watch it now, like I'll be honest, I think I only noticed it about once while watching the Donner cut, that they used just like basic scenes that they recorded for practice or something like that as like the scene replacements because they hadn't actually filmed those scenes. And I think they put like some green screen or something in the background to help it morph a little bit better or mesh into the scene. There was like one or two times where I saw it, but like that's how they got around that. Along with when they went into production for Superman 3 and found out Richard Lester didn't want to do it, they went back to Richard Donner to ask him and he turned them down, which I
Wait, did
thought
they
was pretty.
really?
Yeah, yeah.
I
They
didn't
went
know
back to
that.
him and he
There's
turned
no
them
way.
down. Yeah, dude.
That doesn't
I
make any
swear to
sense
God.
though, because they hate each other. Like literally, the Salkinds and Richard Donner stopped talking during the production of Superman the movie, and like they called each other assholes. That's why Richard Donner was let go because, obviously they stopped filming on Superman 2 to focus on Superman or the first one, and then when preparing to finish shooting, the last like 15 to 20% of the movie, um the Salkinds decided, like, yeah, we don't really want to work with him anymore. And I mean, also, Richard Donner was on record saying, like, yeah, if if certain people are involved, then I don't really want to do it, or I want to do it on my terms. Which I can respect both viewpoints, but I don't know. It was definitely the wrong choice to not let Richard Donner finish Superman 2. Because the sequels, it's fine, but it's really unfortunate that Superman and Superman 2 were supposed to be like a back-to-back thing, and then Superman 2, just the theatrical version, just falters so heavily, and like really fast. Like you can immediately tell the difference. And part of
No,
that is
yeah.
because most of what Donner shot for Superman 2 was a reshot by Lester. And
No, yeah, all of Superman 2 is pretty much reshot. It's kind of crazy because I went back to it for the first 30 minutes before we started this, and I remember while watching the Donner cut, I'm like, didn't wasn't the whole first act in the theatrical cut like
in
in
Paris,
Paris? Like,
yeah.
and then so I went back to it, I'm like, dude, I can't believe how much of a different film this was from what like I actually remembered.
Yeah, it's crazy. I Especially when you watch them like back to back, because that was my experience when I first saw Superman 2 and then the Richard Donner cut. I watched them back to back, and I didn't really know at the time like how different they were. I think the reason for it is because not only did the Salkinds want it to be a little more lighthearted and more comedic, which we'll talk about that. But I think the main reason was because Lester wouldn't get the director, like under the DGA rules, he wouldn't get a sole director credit unless he shot a certain amount of the film, like the percentage wise. And so they just made the decision to reshoot most of it, which is a shame because the best things in the theatrical version are the things that Donner shot, unfortunately.
And one of those that's missing from the theatrical is Marlon Brando because they didn't want to pay. They didn't. That's the reason why he's not in any of the second theatrical, and they cut out all of his stuff from the Richard Donner cut. Is because they didn't want to pay the high priced fee of using his likeness because they wouldn't have him come back. They'd just pay him for what he'd already done. Um,
Yeah, so here's my problem with the Selkines. Like, obviously, you can't deny their importance in kickstarting the franchise, but the problem with them is that they're really cheap. And so, interestingly enough, the films that they worked on like right before this were not as financially successful. Sorry. And Richard Lester actually worked on The Three Musketeers from 1973 and The Four Musketeers, released in 1974. But he sued them because for payments that he hadn't received for having worked on those films, and that's why they brought him on to Superman 2. They kind of brought him on to be like a mediator between Donner and them because like I said earlier, Donner and the Salkinds were not on speaking terms, and so they brought him on as compensation for the whole Musketeers debacle. And then once they fired Richard Donner, he was available to take on the director's chair, and obviously he's more of like a comedic guy. Most of like the weird slapstick humor is from him, both in this one and then obviously he directed Superman 3, so it's very similar. But yeah, I just find it interesting that you see all this time, like in the reading about all this stuff, that the Salkinds are they're a little shady, honestly, because that's why there was the issue with Marlon Brando being in the sequel, because Marlon Brando shot all of his stuff for the movie, but he sued the Salkinds because they didn't pay him, because he was supposed to get a percentage of the box office. That was like a part of his deal, from Superman the movie. And so he filed a restraining order against them and he sued them and he got $15 million in settlement, from that lawsuit. But because of that, the Salkinds didn't want to have to pay him the percentage for Superman 2. And I think also Marlon Brando was asking for more as well,
To be
like to
fair, though,
use
it's
his
Marlon
likeness.
Brando,
Yeah, that's
and
the other thing. Marlon Brando's also an asshole. But
yeah,
that's the problem
that
with
was well
these.
known too. It's just
Yeah.
like if you work with him, it's like, come on, you guys didn't expect this, and then especially once you look at the box office. Now, I'm not saying it was all Brando and Richard Donner, but the first film made 300 in total. Then the theatrical Superman 2 made 210, and then Superman 3 made 80 million. Like
What was
massive,
the
like
budget on Superman 3?
39 million, and the budget on Superman 2 was 54, so 1 million less, and then it goes to 16 million dollars less. But ironically enough, it opened to double of what Superman made
Oh, in the
opening
opening
weekend.
weekend.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, I mean, probably everyone probably was excited, to see the continuation,
See Richard
and then they
Pryor.
quickly realized that it
It
was.
was a Richard Pryor film, and then
Yeah, yeah,
Superman
yeah.
came in for a short
Superman is
cut.
shockingly not in that movie as much as I wanted him to be. But and we'll get to that. But going back to the Marlon Brando thing too, like that was another thing that when I was looking into this, I think the reason why Marlon Brando wasn't as big of a deal, like troublesome on this production, was because Richard Donner kind of knew how to like wrangle him, for lack of a better term. Because like there's a story that I heard about Marlon Brando sort of pitching like a weird idea about like maybe Superman's dad should be like more alien, like a big green bagel or something like that. And then it's Donner apparently just sort of like sat there and calmly responded like, "Yeah, I don't think people want to come to see a bagel; they want to come to see Marlon Brando." And then Marlon Brando was like, "You know what? You're right." And then, I mean, obviously, he refused to learn his lines, and you can kind of tell sometimes, but for the most part, it's fine. Um, but that's the thing, though. I think the Salkinds in firing Donner and like not paying Brando, they made it worse than it needed to be, and that it would have probably been. And it's I don't know. It's just it really
It
bugs
always
me
comes
reading
down
about
to
this because
paying
I
people.
think the main problem with all of these movies is the massive like clash between egos. And I think that does include Donner to a certain point because, like, yeah, maybe Donner probably shouldn't have said, the Salkinds are assholes and I don't want to work with Peter Spangler. Like, that's probably the reason why he got fired. And it's just like, why would you do that? Because, obviously you're still making it. It's fine to say it after the fact when you know that, like, yeah, I'm not going to, be involved in any of that anymore. But I think I tend to side more with, like, Donner in this issue.
I mean, yeah, it's creative over studio in this. It's just everyone doing a giant, massive dick measuring contest. That's
Yeah,
really all it
essentially.
is, and it's really annoying because it ruined so much potential. I think, and I think they just lucked out because Superman and the first film worked out so well that
Yeah.
everything after that just kind of got that loose like pat on the shoulder. You'll get them next time type of mentality. Because you were saying before how you thought the first one is your favorite Superman of the bunch. I think Superman 2 is my favorite.
The
Um,
theatrical version?
no, no, Donner cut. We don't. When I
Okay.
say Superman 2, I'm not talking about theatrical. Like that is its own thing in its own world. It can stay on HBO Max. They can keep
I hate that
streaming it all
movie.
they want. Yeah, it's not good. I mean, honestly, I'd still probably watch it over 30, but still, that doesn't mean anything in
Yeah,
my
that's fair.
opinion. Um, but yeah, I don't know. The one thing coming back to this original Superman film that kind of, I don't want to say rubbed me the wrong way, but I thought I had fonder memories of was the relationship between Clark and
Clark
Lois.
and Lois.
I don't know if you've seen my review for the first one, but
I think I did. Yeah.
it's essentially like I got tired of just watching Clark simp over her the entire time. And that's essentially what happens by the end. The dude simps so hard that he just turns back time. And I mean, I get simping, but she's been nothing but like an asshole essentially to him, and she apologizes to him for it too. So I'm sitting here, I'm like, why do people like Margot Kidder so much in this? Which like I like her lowest because I think the second, like the Donner cut, does a better job at making their relationship work. But
Yeah.
this first one does not do a great job at making them have chemistry or anything because the whole time I'm like, dude, cut it. She's not interested. Just
Mm.
stop, please. You're embarrassing yourself.
Yeah. So I have a very complicated relationship with the character of Lois Lane. I like Margot Kidder in the role. I think she's really good. I think her and Christopher Reeve have a lot of chemistry together, both as Superman and Clark Kent. I mean, obviously more Superman. I think the problem is just the writing in that they make her like overly obsessive with
She,
Superman,
she
and
only
that's
wants
why
Superman.
yeah,
Like
that and
for
that's
two
why she
films.
comes off as like really mean and shallow because you know she'll have these really fun interactions with Superman, but obviously you can kind of tell it's more of like you know it's more of like a physical attraction for lack of a better term. And my problem is that you can't really treat Superman and Clark Kent as like entirely different personalities or people. Like they're the same character. And the problem that I have with a lot of these Superman movies is that they always focus on like one aspect, and they forget to develop the relationship between the Clark Kent persona and Lois Lane like as just individual people. Because yeah, like obviously you're gonna fall in love with Superman, but I want to see her fall in love with Clark. And you know what's funny too? I was thinking about this. I think Batman Forever does a better job at doing this sort of like oh, I'm in love with the superhero, but I'm also in love with the regular person thing better than this movie does. Do you know what I'm talking about?
No, yeah, this movie doesn't really touch it at all. Like she pretty much ignores Clark for a majority of the film and
Hmm.
only acknowledges him when he's like trying to flirt or do something quirky to like get her attention. But
Mm.
then he almost instantly loses it because it's like Superman this, Superman that, or the story this, story that. It's one of those two things, and it just constantly happens throughout the film that once we get to one her death, I don't feel the weight of it as much as I think I should, especially
Yeah.
with how Clark slash Superman deals slash handles it by guys don't question the science on this, but spinning the Earth back
Oh.
so fast that it turns time. Um, like I think it's a cool moment, and I think watching that in theaters at the time would have been really dope. And it's a cool concept, but I think because they don't build their relationship as strong of a foundation as I wish they did between the two of them, especially for the first film. And like this is supposed to be like the love interest of like not Superman movies, but like most of comic book films. Like when you hear about a Superman and their love interest, it's always Superman, Clark, and like Lois Lane. But coming out of this film, it doesn't really feel like that. And
Yeah.
that's really the one gripe I had coming out of this, with how much that they kind of rely on their relationship, it seems like, because there's so many scenes with them together, and that's why I find it kind of confusing.
Mm. Yeah. I mean, so the other problem with the whole time reversal thing is that that wasn't originally supposed to be the ending of this movie.
You could
They were
tell.
it was supposed to be the ending of the next one, which is why in the Richard Donner cut they reuse it
That
because
dude, that was that's
they
gonna
hadn't
be.
they hadn't shot the like they hadn't created a different ending, obviously, because so that was the other thing too. When Richard Donner got fired, like so many of the cast and crew left the production because they got really angry about it, which respect. um
Not Christopher
so
Reeve.
the actress playing Tessmacher, I can't remember her name. It's like Valerie or Vivian or something like that. um she didn't come back to finish her scenes, which is why in the Richard Donner cut she like disappears.
I was about to
um
say that too. Like, you can notice that people just like kind of disappeared. Not for like sections in the middle. You notice it towards the end once the film's concluding. Like some people just kind of drop out and you don't see them or hear about them ever again. But like, I don't think it's such a consequential thing to where it affects the plot line because I think it's just around enough of their stories to where them not being in the plot or really being described why they're not there has much of a consequence, especially when they don't have an ending to go off of, which is my biggest issue with the Donner cut is the ending. But your like explanation of like why it turned out that way makes it a little bit more palatable,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, and I think for just based on the relationship that Lois does have with Superman and Clark, I can still get on board with the idea of him caring so much that he reverses time. But I agree that it definitely could be more effective, um, especially given the fact that knowing that it was supposed to be in the second one, and it would have made a little more sense that way because they would have had more time to like build that relationship. But it's fine, it works. I like the performances in those moments, and it is a really cool moment, even though it kind of doesn't make sense because I my main problem with the whole time reversal thing is that
He just does it.
it's never not that it's never explained how it works, but it's never explained how,
He
because
like knows how it works.
he
Like
reverses time, and my understanding is that it reverses like everything that's happened, but those things are still going to happen. And so my problem is that in the movie it never shows us like him going to fix those things, because obviously he rewinds time to go save Lois and he fixes that. But in my head I'm still thinking like, oh well, the dam is still breaking, Jimmy's still hanging for his life, the town is in danger, there's still probably the earthquake happening, like all of those things that he did right before going there essentially have been undone in my head, and the movie never explains how he resolves that issue. And then it's even worse in the second one because he
yeah.
reverses time so that Zod and company are like never released from the Phantom Zone, but like the reason that they're released from the Phantom Zone is because he solves one of the problems in the end of this movie. And again, it never explains how he solves that problem without releasing them. So I'm just kind of left wondering, like, how do the mechanics of, like, does he just get to decide while he's doing it, like, which things get reversed and which things don't? That's my problem with it. And I noticed it more this time around. And that's the other thing, too. There were things that really annoyed me when I first saw it that when I rewatched them, they didn't bug me as much anymore. Kind of like the Lois Lane thing. Like I really didn't like her character when I first saw these movies, especially in Superman 2. But when I was watching them, I kind of I found myself enjoying them more. So I guess I'm just like when I was first watching them, I couldn't get over how disappointed I was, and so it was affecting how much I didn't enjoy it. But yeah.
Ugh, sorry. I just had like a massive yawn as you like pause there. Yeah, no, I absolutely agree though, and for me, it kind of takes away the ending for both the first and the second, or at least the Donner cut, because it
Yeah.
feels like it has no consequence to his actions, and all of his actions are due to selfish and egotistical reasons.
Mm.
Like, just she doesn't die this time, but he's pushing time back and making everything kind of rehappen again to make Lois forget him. Like,
Yeah.
that's the most selfish thing I could think of. Meanwhile, that characteristic is like never ever like been seen throughout most of the film in the first and the second. And so it just feels kind of weird at the end that you get to this moment and you just come back to where you are at the beginning of the first film. Nothing ever feels consequential in most of these films, and I think that's the other issue
Yeah.
outside of it. But outside of like I'm not saying like they're big issues. They're nitpicks upon nitpicks that, like I can't control what happened with Superman 2, but I think it gives us like a good topic point to discuss. And I ultimately don't think like a lot of the things we discussed as quote unquote issues like make or break a lot of these films, because I think
Mm,
this first one still holds up really well, man.
no, yeah, the first one is really good. Like,
I'm not mentioning the third one. I'm specifically
yeah,
talking about
no.
the first and the Donner cut. The third
So
we
yeah,
will get into whenever.
I don't know. Obviously the Donner cut still has issues. Most of that is because of it's incomplete. But I mean, I think they did a good job of like mitigating those issues and using what they had to from the Lester version. And most of that is just like when Zod and the other two Kryptonians arrive on Earth. That's all, and you can tell because it's more comedic in tone. Um, but yeah, that stuff. Oh, and yeah, like you were saying earlier, there's instances where you can kind of tell that it wasn't shot for either of them. Specifically, like when Lois looks back up after falling or
Yeah,
jumping out the
that's the shot
window.
I was thinking of.
That's you can't tell exactly. The only reason you can tell it's a green screen effect and it's not done very well. But that was a stand-in that looked like Christopher Reeve. There's a shot at the end of the movie, or there's a couple of shots at the end of the movie where Lois is sitting down at a desk and typing on a typewriter.
She like
That one
looks
you can
up.
really tell that's not Margot Kidder. That's just a
Yeah,
stand-in. She doesn't really look like Margot Kidder. But I think when you at a first glance, it kind of tricks your brain. But there's stuff like that where you can tell like, oh, that wasn't shot in the 70s. And but I think for the most part, it definitely this one feels much more like a complete story than Superman, like the theatrical version of Superman 2 does, because that one is just horrendous. When I first saw that movie, I was so excited. I was like, oh, we're gonna watch the next one. It's I've heard really great things. People really like this movie, and I don't understand why.
I
It
just think
is
because the other
so
two are so much
ungodly
worse.
disappointing.
The other two are just so much worse, and I think that's why. Like,
No, but even at the time, like it was generally well received, like by
was it?
critics and by fans. Obviously, it made over $200 million at the box office. That's just crazy to me. This movie is so much inferior to the original one that I was shaking when in my chair while I was watching it. That's how angry I was. That
You're
I
talking about
was
the
essentially
theatrical cut, right?
yeah, that I was essentially duped into watching a bad version of this movie. Because I intended to watch the Richard Donner version, but I was like, well, I'll watch the theatrical version first, not realizing how different they were.
Yeah,
And also,
two totally different films.
yeah, because most of everything that's in them, it's essentially the same thing with like the Justice League movie, where the theatrical version of Justice League is completely different from the Snyder version.
It just borrows
Um,
some scenes.
essentially they borrow because a lot of the stuff is reshot, rewritten. It's literally the same thing. Superman 2, Richard Lester reshot everything so that he get the director credit. I mean, obviously Joss Whedon didn't get a director credit on Justice League, but essentially changing the tone of the movie was the essential goal of both of those versions. And I hate the comedy in the theatrical version of this movie. It really, really bugs me. It's the same problem that I had when I first saw Superman the movie, but on steroids. I hate the slapstick humor that they give the villains, because in my head the villains should not be comic relief.
Especially Krypton baddies that are the only ones to like have ever been like the worst beings that had to be sent to the Phantom Zone. Like they're
Yeah,
built up to be like these really terrible criminals. And like I don't think the Donner version sells it. I think it sells it a lot better,
yeah,
but I don't think it sells it that well. But dude, you can't even like really talk about that theatrical cut once you see the fucking opening of it, just compared to the Donner cut. Like that, like Zod and his little cronies coming up, like that reshot scene of them getting captured, is just so hideously awful and just poorly directed that I hate it. I hate the fucking Paris stuff. None of it's good. Just none of
no,
it's good. And I think that's what makes the Donner Cut seem like a fucking Oscar award winning film in my eye in
mm,
comparison. And I think the tone works a lot better, at least coming off of the first film. I like that there's a maturity to it that the first one didn't have. And
yeah,
then the first, like, the theatrical cut just kind of dumbs itself down just to kind of make itself more prevalent for more audiences. It's what Blumhouse does for their films now. Like with the whole new Megan film and like the
oh
last
yeah,
Megan film where they shot it to be R with gore, violence, all this, but they edited it to PG-13 to sell more tickets,
and then
but then
release the unrated
released the
version.
R unrated version on like Paramount Plus or whatever fucking of the 10 streaming sites on there to get more revenue. But the films are so fucking awful that neither people are going to see the PG-13 one or waste time to watch the free one that they already pay for. And I
Yeah,
think that's like what this film runs into essentially.
yeah, I agree. It's just everything that Lester shot is just so bad, especially in comparison. Because I mean, obviously, when I was first watching it, I could tell the difference, and it was really jarring to me. And then I don't know, there's just so much in it that I'm just like, why? Oh, that's the other thing too. They dubbed over the woman playing Ursa for some reason.
Why?
In Superman, in the theatrical version of Superman 2, that is not her voice. In Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, they used pretty much majority of it her real voice. And I and that wasn't even something that I saw. I watched both versions of the movie and I realized that it was a different voice, and so I looked it up because it's nowhere on the Wikipedia or anything. I think it's somewhere in the IMDb, but you kind of have to look for it. And
Do you know
I was, what's
Do you
up?
know who voices Jor-El in the opening of the theatrical one? Because as soon as I heard his voice, I'm like, dude, that's an awful Marlin impersonation.
I'm gonna be
Because
honest. I don't even remember Jarrell being in the
no,
theatrical version.
he's not. He has like two lines of dialogue to set everything up in the beginning of the theatrical cut. And I'm telling you, I only know that because I turned it on 20 minutes before we started watching this. And because I watched it on HBO, TCM, Turner
Mm.
Classic Movie, does like a little intro for them and gives a little like behind the scenes. And so he'd mentioned how Marlon Brando wasn't a part of it, and so they cut all of his stuff out. And then the first line of dialogue is a Jor-El line, and I only know that because I had the captions on,
Oh, and
and
it
it
said
said
who the
Jor-El,
character.
and it sounded nothing like Jor-El, but someone trying to do an impersonation voice, and I'm just like,
Mm.
what? This is awful. You guys should have cut this of all things if you wanted to
Well,
cut something. You didn't need it.
that's the other thing too. Is like in Gene Hackman also refused to return for to finish production. I mean, he'd pretty much shot all of his scenes, but he didn't want to reshoot anything because him and Donner were pretty good friends on the set of the first one, and he was so loyal to him that he it was like, I'm not coming back. He was like, I fulfilled my contractual obligations. I shot everything that was needed of me, and I'm not coming back for that stuff. And so they had to get a lookalike and a voice impersonator to, um, stand in for all of that stuff.
That's so cringe. That just seems like so much extra work and effort just because you're a bunch of greedy fucks. To like,
Pretty much, yeah. I
This
mean,
just
and
makes me
also
think.
that's the reason why Margot Kidder is in like 5 minutes of Superman 3, because she like publicly um um complained about it. Essentially, she publicly went on record and was like, "Yeah, I didn't agree with the firing of Richard Donner," which again, respect.
Well, that's like an. I don't even want to say one of my main things with Superman 3 because there's a lot of main things with Superman 3. But like it's very obvious that Margot Kidder didn't want to be in that film and they wrote her out as fast as they fucking could. Like that she
Yeah.
probably had a 30 minutes worth of shooting for one day and that was it.
No,
And
apparently she was only there for 5 days.
oh, that's a lot longer than I would have thought. So
Yeah,
you
well,
know
she's
what?
not in the movie as much. She's
That's what I'm
she's
bro.
literally in
She's
the
in the
beginning
first
of
five
the
minutes
movie.
and the
Yeah,
last 5 minutes.
yeah,
And they're
literally.
both in the same set. So
Yeah,
that's what makes
yeah.
me think. And she's wearing the same thing. Like that's
Oh,
what
you're
makes me
right. She is wearing the same thing. I
think.
didn't even
Yeah.
catch that.
That's why I'm like
That's
5 days
fucking
seems like a
hilarious.
lot of time for that. Like,
Yeah.
but it's just so painfully obvious. And then when they try to like get Lana Lang, who just has like 3 lines of dialogue in the first film, to like come in and be the love interest, and then they totally abandon that idea after the first act ends, and she just Lana Lang is a fucking nothing character after like Clark gets honored or Superman gets honored in Smallville.
Yeah,
And
after
it kind
he
of
becomes
shocked me
evil.
going back to it. Yeah. And I'm like, dude, wait, you guys just built up this entire love story for the first act while Richard Pryor was being a fucking goofball for the past 45 minutes, only for her not to care about him anymore, for him not to care about her anymore. Bro, they literally just wrote bad Superman to have sex with one of the like
Oh, the
accomplices,
Tessmacher
yeah, Tessmacher
adjacent one.
equivalent character,
Yeah.
just because he's ooh bad, edgy, emo Superman, fucks her, and
Mhm.
then Lois, not Lois, Jesus Christ, Lana.
Lana.
Because why would you make two love interest names with L as the first letter? But that's neither
Well, I
here
mean,
nor there.
they're from the comics, so that's
No, I
why.
know. That's my point, though. As a comic book writer, why would you put
Oh,
Lana and Lois as his two love interests?
I think it's just that the person who wrote them really liked alliteration, so
I see that.
yeah. But yeah, I like Lana in this movie. I definitely agree she's heavily underutilized.
I
I
like
there
her
were there
too.
were there were a lot of things that I knew about this movie, but I did not expect for that subplot, I guess if we want to call it, to be essentially, yeah, meaningless, cuz they focus a lot of time on it in like the first act, and then yeah, as soon as Superman like turns evil, it becomes
Vamos.
abandoned, but then they keep cutting back to it for some reason, and then eventually like at the end it kind of gets resolved. But the whole time I'm thinking like, I forgot you were in this movie, because and again, it doesn't help that this movie is essentially three ideas just like mashed and crumpled into one movie, because you have the Lana and Clark romance, which doesn't really go anywhere, but whatever. You have the Superman, yeah, I guess turning evil and having like an identity crisis, which that's kind of interesting, but again, they don't explore it enough. And then you've got the main plot of this movie, which is Richard Pryor trying to find a job and stand up
Yeah,
for himself. This
essentially.
movie is like Superman. I can't even like say Superman is the main character of this movie, because the movie focuses so much on Richard Pryor. This is a Richard Pryor movie. It is not a Superman movie. Richard Pryor is essentially the protagonist of this movie. And that really annoyed, like, because when I first started watching this movie last night, I sent you a message on Snapchat of just like the opening of it and just being like, why is this the beginning of this movie?
It's so awkward.
The entire first 38 minutes of this movie are horrible, because you have Richard Pryor trying to get a job, or I guess trying to keep his benefits from like unemployment or something, and then immediately it transitions into the opening titles, and my god. So we didn't talk about this with the first two, but the the first two movies have like the most well, actually, I don't really remember if it's like that in the theatrical version, but at least
The theatrical one is so stupid. They have the text fly in like it's Superman from like the side of the screen, and it has like a the shade effect coming from behind, like
Hmm.
he's like it's flying, but like the Donner cut has like the same thing, but instead of it flying from like left frame to right, it's coming from back of frame, so like kind of up upper thirds of the frame into the middle, like it's striking you in the face, so it
Hmm.
doesn't look as awkward, like it's kind of trailing. And it has like I just think it's done a lot better, and it hurt, bro. Like when I was watching the opening for the theatrical of the second one, my eyes were hurting me. I fast forwarded them. Like
Mm.
I couldn't watch him.
Well, see, that's the thing. Like in Superman the movie, the opening titles are so fucking iconic. Like you can't help but just look at it, like watch the whole thing. When I was watching Superman the movie and the Richard Donner cut, I did not, because normally I don't like when movies start with like the opening titles, but in these ones I really like them because they're important to one, establishing the tone, and like there's just an epicness to them that you can't ignore. And also the John Williams score. Like the John Williams score, that Superman theme just hits so hard for no fucking reason. And then you immediately going into Superman 3, just awful. It's got this weird like blur effect to it, and it's slanted. It almost looks kind of like the Star Wars one, but more dumb. And I'm just like, why would you do that? Why would you get rid of the most important part of like the beginning of the first one? And it's, I don't know, it really irked me when I watched it. And then also you have that weird like sketch comedy shit going on in the background, and I'm just like, why? I don't want to see this. I want to see us flying through space. That's so much cooler.
But
And
no,
then
bro.
you get to them actually introducing Superman in that movie, and it's the most pathetic fucking thing I've ever seen.
Dude, it's so cringe watching him just go into like the photo booth, and then he just does like this light little hover across the street to just rip open the top of this car. And I'm just watching this and I'm like, what the fuck? Meanwhile, the whole time, like the credits are going down like below everything that's going on, but they're happening so fast that you can't read any of them at the same time. And so I'm
Yeah.
like, who was that? And it makes it even funnier because they try to do like that text scroll, like you were saying with Star Wars, but because they're overlaying it with like a scene going on, they have to like
It's
fade it before it gets halfway up the screen, and then they
they
have
like
like the
feather it. It's like
scroll. Yeah,
feathering
it's feathered, and
in
then
fucking
the
After
scroll is like
Effects.
times three, so it's really weird. And I'm like, dude, what is going on? Like, do you guys not want us to know who worked on this? Like,
Yeah, and but also that's the other thing too. Like going back to the score, like the score for that scene is just like weirdly fuck, what's the word I'm looking for?
kiddish.
Not kiddish. It's like whimsical. It's like whimsical, and I'm
Yeah.
like, Superman is not whimsical. Like it should be more like the one from the original. But I guess, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, maybe I'm complaining about it too much because the rest of this movie, I feel like that would be misleading because the rest of this movie is not good either. This movie is really boring, and part of that is because we're not focusing on any one thing that's interesting. I like the idea of Clark going back to Smallville, and I like Lana Lang in this. I think she's an interesting contrast between between Clark and Lois, because I can at least tell that I'm sorry, not Clark, that Lana actually cares for him, like not the Superman persona, but Clark specifically. Like she likes him, and so I was able to buy more into like their romance a little bit. But then the fact that it just completely falls off, I think what it feels like to me is like halfway through shooting the movie, they realized like, oh fuck, I forgot this is a Superman movie. We need Superman to do Superman things, and so it just quickly like changes gears for no reason.
Yeah. This movie was just kind of made for all the wrong reasons, and you
Yeah.
could just see that feather like littered throughout from the beginning to the end, because you can just know straight away that this was a film made just for Richard Pryor and not for Superman.
Well, here's the thing. So Lester was not going to come back because Lester is not a comic book fan and he's not a fan of the character, which you can tell. But so
Hmm.
he didn't want to come back, and the way that they got him to come back was by saying Richard Pryor is going to be in it. And so because he's a big comedy person, he jumped at the chance to work with Richard Pryor, and you can tell not that the Richard Pryor scenes are better because they're
He just
not.
takes a. There's a lot of Richard Pryor in the
There's just so
movie.
much of him in it.
There's just so much of him.
Too much. There's too much of him in it.
Which
Um,
makes it even funnier, especially when you look at the poster, because Superman and Richard Pryor really don't even see each other till the
yeah,
end
they
of the
don't
film.
interact.
They don't interact whatsoever. They don't like really go like follow each other's paths or cross over at any point, which is what makes like the kryptonite part of the story really awkward because it
Mm.
kind of feels like they put the kryptonite in to put kryptonite in. That's just and I'm sitting there the whole time like, bro, there's no fucking way like 0.5% of tar instead of the unknown substance, like has him become like a bad boy, like Spider-Man 3 bad boy, and then
Oh,
have him like dissociate himself. Like none of it ever really made sense. And so I'm sitting there the whole time like, am I watching like Clark and Superman become two separate people? Is this Clark like it's very obvious that
you
Clark
talking about
was
during the
all
fight scene?
yeah. But just all of it.
I mean, I
Just
think it's obvious that they. Well, no, maybe it's not obvious
it's not
because.
obvious because he's dressed as Clark and then he has the abilities of Superman. But then the same, like, bro, he literally gets crushed and goes through the ground and then,
Yeah.
like, pushes it back up. And fucking evil Superman is just, like, treating him like he's just, like, a human. And it's just a really confusing plot point that they just
Yeah.
randomly insert into the middle of the story to add, like, some type of problem for Superman to deal with because Richard Pryor and all of that has nothing to do with him.
Well, I think that's what's funny too is that the reason why, like, Richard Pryor and the Lex Luthor ripoff get involved with Superman is really dumb. Like, it's almost like not only is it inconsequential, but it's very convenient, and that was kind of I don't know. Yeah, I didn't like any of that stuff. And I will say, like, the fight between Superman and Superman, like, that was the most interesting. That was the one part of the movie where I was like, I'm not like extremely bored right now. Yeah, it doesn't make any sense, but it's not this stupid comedic shit that I really don't enjoy.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. It's just too many cooks in the kitchen of ideas with this film, and we want to make this a sketch comedy for Richard Pryor, but also we need to make this a sequel for Superman at the same time. But it's like, how do we make this film with the same components as the other without none of the actors because we fucked up all of our relationships with them. And the funny part
Yeah.
is like they didn't even need to have Lana as a love interest in this. And I know it's in the comics, but they could have easily like how does the theatrical of the second one end?
I don't even remember. Oh no, I do remember because it's dumb. What the way that it ends is that so Superman kills Zod and the other Kryptonians, and then he goes back to America from the Fortress of Solitude with with Lois, and they both realize that they can't be together for a dumb reason, but whatever. And then he kisses her, and she magically forgets who he
Okay,
is.
so she still does forget by the end. Like they still do that same shtick, right?
Yes, but it's more dumb in the theatrical version because he
Yeah, like
literally he kisses her and she just forgets somehow. It doesn't explain it. It's just a magic kiss.
but that's fine for like the sake of the argument. It's just like you guys could have had like them be in a relationship still. Like it, you didn't need to have like this whole Lana Lang thing in here to like make it extra complicated when it has nothing to do with anything else. Like I think that's the issue. Is all of the
It
plot
doesn't
lines
factor
have nothing to
into the
do with
plot.
any of them. So
Yeah.
when they all try to connect them, none of it works, and it all
Yeah.
just kind of feels flimsy. Like having Richard Pryor come into Smallville as like a random military cadet to give Superman this fucking kryptonite, and everyone in the crowd's like, "Who are these people?" The cops are like, "I don't know. This guy's supposed to come in," and the whole time he's just like cracking jokes and making himself look like a doofus. And I'm like, why is anyone taking this guy seriously right now? Why is Superman taking him seriously? And like, bro, this looks like kryptonite. Is your first thought not that this guy is trying to harm you? What is someone giving you
Oh,
kryptonite
yeah.
as like a gift? Like, come on now. Like, bro, what? Like, there's just so many stupid little decisions to try to make them connect that make them seem even dumber, you know?
Yeah. I hate that scene for a lot of reasons. One, just the weird like stand up thing that Pryor. I've never seen a Richard Pryor movie, so I don't know. I'm sure the other ones are good, but
It's very much in vein of Richard
this does
Pryor.
not sell me on watching any of his other movies because I was so annoyed. I was so annoyed that he was in it so much, but also I was so annoyed that like there's so much time dedicated in that scene to his weird jokes that I didn't find funny. I wasn't laughing. I was just sitting there like glaring at the screen because I was really tired of watching this movie, and that's only like halfway through the movie, and I was already ready for it to be over. Like even Superman 2 wasn't that bad, but yeah, I was just sitting there being, and then yeah, the whole thing of like, because I honestly, it would to me it would have made more sense if he opened it, and even if it doesn't actually hurt him, for Superman to just be like, oh, like back away from it or something, just be like, oh, I don't want to be around that, because
He's just
he
like he
would
looks at him
know,
just like thanks. Like what?
yeah, like he would know that it's harmful to him, even if it's that version of it isn't. And then oh my god. And then following that, we get just the most uncomfortable scene I've ever seen in a superhero movie of Superman aggressively hitting on Lana. It is so
Weird.
uncomfortable to
It's so
watch
weird.
because it is so creepy. And I'm like, why would you do this to my boy? Why would you do this to my boy Christopher Reeve?
What I
Like,
will say to that though is I feel like the first film had moments of that as well, just in like the
you
opposite
mean with
direction.
Tessmacher?
Yeah, Tessmacher, like people would just like randomly kiss him and show him like I think it's less weird because it's the woman doing it to the man,
What's
but like
framed in a different way too.
yeah, it's also framed it like, but like her explanation is just like, because once I took the thing off, I know you wouldn't kiss me before. Like that's such a weird fucking line to drop. Like I know it's a woman and the stances are like a lot different, but
I
like
mean, it
if you
is
didn't drop that,
unconsensual.
if you didn't drop that line though, it would have made it a lot less weird
Yeah,
for
yeah.
her to acknowledge like you wouldn't have kissed me. Like that's the the films do quite a bit of that. So I don't
Mm,
want to say it's like just this film, like the third
yeah.
one too, but it is really weird, and I don't know why they keep going back to these like type of moments. Like
Well, I mean, also like when
it's got to be
because
the eyeliner.
we
It's got
we
to be the
wait
eyeliner.
we wait so well, or we linger so long on her deciding like whether or not to do it, that makes it a little more awkward. And also like in this movie too, when he meets the Tessmacher ripoff, and he like aggressively like grabs her by the arm and
Grabs her
pulls
and
her
just
up.
like.
Well, she's weirdly into it, and I'm like, okay. And the other thing too with her character is like, for some reason, like they like I noticed it when they first showed her like reading like a dense book, and then when everyone comes in, she like tries to hide it, and they keep like hinting to the fact that she's really smart, but they don't do anything with it. And so when it got to the end of the movie, I was just questioning like, why did you keep like bringing that up and cutting back to it, because it literally serves no point in the movie.
Yeah, I agree, dude. That's what the third one just kind of entails throughout, and it's really annoying.
Yeah, and the climax of it was weird too, because all of a sudden there's this like supercomputer that's the bad guy. I don't know. None of it made sense, and I just found myself getting more and more frustrated with the weird things that were going on. And then the movie ends in a very unsatisfying way.
I'm just glad it
Um,
ended.
no, I am too. I'm very glad that it ended. That was that it's a tough watch. Like I was not prepared for how boring this movie was going to be. And that's to me that's its biggest, crime is that it's just boring.
That's why there's the term "so good that it's bad," or "so
This
bad
is
that it's good."
yeah, this is
Said
not
it
that.
backwards. Yeah, it's just so bad that it's bad.
Yeah, honestly, and that's why I left the review that I did. And I'll bring it up later, but yeah, it was a very baffling experience.
Okay, do we want to get into wrap ups then and do our review, our little letterbox reviews?
Yeah, yeah. I don't really
All
have
right,
much else to say about these movies.
I'll let you go first.
Okay, shit, hold on.
Okay, I'll go first then. Well, I wait for you. So I gave Superman 4 out of 5 stars. My review is, man, Lois fucking friend zoned Clark so hard she got him turning time back and shit. I think it's an instant classic. There's a reason why the score is still used to this day heavily in every single Superman project. Um, I still think Christopher Reeves is also the the Superman.
Yeah,
Um, we'll talk about my feelings on David Cornsweet next week because I want to save that for next week's conversation because I
yeah,
did wind up liking him, but I still think Christopher Reeves is the Superman. This film cements him as that, and he's the only consistent thing throughout. Is even though his story might not be good, him being Superman just brings the film up another level that just makes it enjoyable all around. And he just brings that great sense of hope, I think, that just lingers throughout.
yeah.
Give us your review, bitch.
Oh, we're doing it back and forth. Sorry,
Yeah, yeah,
didn't
we'll
know that.
just do back and forth. Just because it's
I
necessary.
yeah. I also gave it a 4 out of 5 stars. I was debating. This is from when I first saw it, like I think 2 years ago. When I after I finished, I was debating whether or not I should give it like 4.5 because I don't think it's a perfect movie, but I think I'm just gonna leave it where it is for now. Because overall, I think it's a really good movie. There are issues that I had, the weird comedy stuff with Lex Luthor and all that, and then the way that it ends is a little weird. But overall, I think it's a very fun watch. That's legacy will continue to endure due to like the technical achievements and the performances that I really do think are fantastic. And I agree, Christopher Reeve is great in this movie. And so are all the other ones. I like Lex Luthor, or Gene Hackman's portrayal of Lex Luthor. Um, and Marlon Brando, yeah, he's an asshole, but I think he works in this movie. Unfortunately, but also like a lot of he's not the opening stuff is really good. But for the majority of the other two, he's not really like in it per se. Like he's just like a projection, and he's just reading off of things.
Yeah.
So that stuff works. I like Margot Kidder, and I think she has good chemistry with Christopher Reeve. It's just some of the writing that's a little underwhelming.
Does
But
her
yeah,
no justice.
yeah.
All right. So for Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, I also have it at 4 out of 5 stars. I think you'll like this review. Bro simmed so hard for Lois again. Not only did he give up his powers, but turned back time once again.
Go ahead and what was your rating for the theatrical version?
I
Have you
didn't.
ever
So
even?
I haven't seen it in a while.
Okay,
I only made it halfway through before this, so I plan on finishing it today, and I'm sure I'll talk to you about it on the side when I'm
okay,
done. But like, I can already tell you, it's not going to be anywhere near what the Donner cut is. Just from
okay.
off the top of my head, I'd probably give it a star, which is more in line, which is like Superman 3, which, spoiler, I'll just give it now. I'll give it a half a star. And I said, movie will at least surprise you in the sense you never know what's actually going to happen in this film.
Yeah. So for Superman 2, the theatrical version, I gave it a 2.5, I think, or yeah, two
That
and a
feels
half.
generous.
Yeah, man, it's a little generous. I honestly, I might lower it to a 2.
Gives
But
it
my
0 stars.
uh Oh, I gave a really long one for this one too. I had a lot to say when I first saw this movie. I gave it a
You're
long
so
letterbox
emotional.
review. Um, yeah, I don't know. I essentially I didn't like the comedic tone that plagues this movie. I don't like Richard Lester's direction. It's not very good. Um, the villains are weirdly comedic relief. They have this like fish out of water subplot that I really didn't enjoy. And again, it feels very like unrelated to the main conflict with Clark and wanting to be human and wanting to be with Lois that I just thought was weird. The ending of the movie is baffling because it's intercut with stuff that Donner shot and stuff that Lester shot, and then you have those weird that weird fight scene with them where like you have like the cellophane S thing. And then
So
there's
dumb.
a you'll see it when you watch it when you finish watching it where like how do I even describe this? Like when they're fighting, they like disappear and reappear like all the Kryptonians do. For that's It's never explained what that is or how it works, and I think it even creates like duplicates of them as well. It's just really weird, and I didn't. And also, that's another thing. Something that's missing from the Donner cut that is in Superman 2 is um the Kryptonians, not including Superman, can like levitate things. Like they have telekinesis,
Oh, what?
and there's only one instance of it in the Donner cut because, like I said before, Donner hadn't really shot anything for them first arriving, and it's when they get confronted by those two police officers, and Zod takes control of one of the deputy's shotgun. But yeah, it's weird stuff like that it's just really jarring, and I didn't like it. Superman 2, the Richard Donner cut, I gave a 3.5 out of 5 stars. I don't think because it's incomplete. I don't think it's nearly good enough to stand right next to Superman the movie, but it's still a good watch. I enjoyed watching it when I first saw it, and I enjoyed watching it this second time. And this is my preferred version. I really don't ever want to watch Superman 2, the theatrical version ever again. And actually, when we were talking about which ones we wanted to do, you asked me, "Are we going to do the theatrical version or the Richard Donner cut?" And immediately I was like, "I will never bring Superman 2 into my home ever again. I don't ever want to watch that movie. It really angers me. Probably more than it should, but it really does." But yeah, this one's just more in line with the first one, and it feels like more of a complete story too, even though it is essentially incomplete. And then Superman 3, where is it? Superman 3. I gave a 1.5. And I think my review was apparently Superman 4 is somehow worse than this. Yeah, I mean, I know it probably will be, and I've seen some clips, and yeah, it looks pretty bad, but this movie is so boring and so like uninteresting to watch. I did not have fun watching it.
Yeah, Richard Pryor just straight up is not funny either.
No, he's not. And in this movie, at least, again, I don't know. In other movies, I'm sure he's fine. I know he's a really big like comedy icon, but
That's
I
the
didn't
thing that
enjoy his
pisses
part
me
in
off
this.
about it is because like I haven't watched a shit ton of his stand up, but like I've catched a few segments and the dude's fucking hilarious. And what I've noticed is I haven't watched a lot of his films either. I've only seen him in Blazing Saddles with
Ooh,
what's his name? I
Gene something.
Gene something from
Fuck, what's his name?
I know, dude, I'm blanking on
God
his
damn it!
last
Now
name.
I can't remember. Hold on a second.
But
I gotta look it up.
you know who I'm talking about. I think he works better when he's in a
Willy Wonka.
duo.
Yeah.
I just think Richard Pryor works in a duo rather than him trying to bounce off other people. You know what I mean? And I think that's the problem is he's by himself and no one else is funny. So he's
Yeah.
just trying to make stuff work out of stuff that can't be worked with. So that's why it's annoying.
Definitely. Yeah. Oh, it's Gene Wilder, by the way.
Gene Wilder. Dude, I
Yeah.
knew I was gonna hate that. Dude, bro, he's like so fucking famous and you think we'd know it, right?
Well, it's because I always get him mixed up with Gene Hackman because their names are kind of similar. Um, but yeah,
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
yeah.
All right, Leo.
So those were the first three, four technically, I guess you can say, Superman movies in the Christopher Reeve run. I don't know. It's unfortunate that most of them are not good, and they're not going to get better. Because we're going to talk about sometime down the line we're going to talk about Superman 4, and then we're going to talk about Superman Returns and Man of Steel, and those ones also aren't great either. Um, but yeah, so next week we were going to talk about those other three that I just mentioned, but since by the time we start recording that, me and Ryan and I will both have seen the new Superman, so we're just going to do an entire video related to that one. So that's what you have to look forward to.
Yeah, boy. Nah, I don't know why. I just wanted to say that really bad. Cool. Thank you guys for checking out the show. Let us know down in the comments below what you think of the first three Superman films. And I swear to God, if anyone says that the theatrical cut of Superman 2 is their favorite, I might go just jump off the edge of a building. But other than that, see you guys on the next one. Peace.